Number 17. When the group consciousness came together to create the Earth experience as a flow of creation, the free will element within the framework was given particular emphasis with the desire to allow the creative element to be given free rein. The hope was that this special emphasis would allow a blossoming of what you might term a utopian experience within the universal laws. It was not contemplated that the opposite would be created within the context of this focus. The joy of abundance was seen as a result of the proper placement of those laws at the center of the experience. Instead, the result was that the abundance of materiality became the focus, and the concept of the end justifies the means became the framework of the distorted use of the universal laws. If the distorted version of the laws that indeed govern existence in this universe of projected thought is all that is known, then how do you create your way through this experience into a new paradigm which is in harmony with the totality of all that does exist in balance? This is the crux of the dilemma. If the earthly focus were created within a group focus, it would seem that a return to that beginning point would be the point to move toward. Picture as a beginning point, a small group of dots coming together into a single larger dot, then this dot expanding outward into a bubble with a focus point in the middle. All of this is within an expanding movement. Next, see that bubble is starting to change shape and become an elongated shape which continues to distort into various configurations until it seems to be coming to a bursting point as more and more pressure is focused toward that point. Now, in your imagination, how would you return that configuration to a perfect circle? Think back to the way the circle was created in the first place and repeat the process. Isn't that what we have been recommending? You need not be all-knowing upper dimensional beings to do this, for as you come together with the intention of creating this return to balance, you need but invoke the creative process to receive guidance. Believe us when we say that it is through your concerted intention that this distortion will be brought into balance. It is the mass consciousness that controls the shape of the bubble. It exists within a flowing movement of the thoughts of all. As the negative pressure is purposefully pushing the mass consciousness to conform to its distorted thought forms, which are contrary to what supports the existence of the bubble, the mass consciousness begins to react. Certain available connections to the source of each individual component of mass consciousness begin to enliven, to resonate as if being irritated by this pressure. The awareness of this reaction is causing more pressure to be applied through the methods that have brought the situation to the place that it is now. Think in terms of the bursting point on the bubble. If this bubble were to react, as would one of your balloons, this point would begin to thin and become more vulnerable. What if instead this point, which consists of thought which thinks, would instead thicken and react in ways contrary to the apparent laws of the material world? Remember that thought thinking within itself couldn't accept thought that does not fit within the context of creation. Thought contrary to creation is directional only by focus in what you might think of as requiring great effort. It cannot be released to complete the creation on its own. Thus this process requires that every contingency must be considered and contained within the plan or added to the plan, which would then in turn affect the whole of the plan. Do you think this is possible when compared to the realm of thought that can think within itself and know every contingency in less than the blink of an eye? This all-thinking thought has one incredible restriction called the free will of the participants. However, when the free will of the participants comes into resonance through intent and purpose, then indeed all creation breaks loose, so to speak. Is it as simple as that? What about all the laws of creation that have been broken by all those within the mass consciousness? Isn't each of them required to repent and give up all their erroneous thinking? Come now, isn't that what experiencing is all about? You have forgotten something. Each of you is thought manifested into third-dimensional energy. If thought can think within itself, then do you think that it can do that within each individual? It can, but it has the one restriction of free will. However, the desire to move through this experience and return this planet as a whole to its rightful place within the creation is a free will decision. When an internal boiling point is reached within each consciousness by the pressure being applied, don't you think that there shall be a call within each for help from their Creator? There is a point when those who are under the spell of religions that require an intermediary to their God will bypass that belief and undertake a call within themselves that shall awaken the understanding of their true connection. When that reaches a critical level, then that shall join in the new point of focus being formed at the center of the real circle, bubble, of existence which within creation has always existed. It is a matter of identifying with the real bubble and not the one that is this play on the stage of the mass consciousness. If that is the case, then why the big deal? Because the play is reality for the mass consciousness, and in their free will it is real, and the continued existence of these soul extensions is in danger of extreme damage with reaction that cannot be explained in third-dimensional terms. It is a matter of the realization by enough of these extensions that another reality is within their ability to identify and claim. Perhaps your greeting should be welcome to the winning side. Let us identify and claim. Number 18. The day begins anew as your planet turns on its axis and mankind sleeps on under the influence of the forces of darkness. Their plans seem to move in an inexplicable focus of disaster, and only the few faithful ones appear to be awake and recording the movement of doom upon this lovely world of green and blue. The magic of the beauty becomes blurred, and the very home upon which you depend is shutting down around you, and still, if noticed, it is ignored. The final days descend into the abyss while your TV, sports, and sleeping potions drug you figuratively and literally. What now can you few do to stem the tide of blackness as it deepens more and more quickly? Shall we recount again all that you already know and groan and beat upon our breasts, as did the prophets of old, and cry out for God to save us? Millions are already doing that to a creator they think ignores their cries to answer their prayers. It is in the perception of victims that desire rescuing that they ask and cannot receive answers to such prayers. Indeed, only those prayers that ask for empowerment within the framework of creation can be answered. Do you think that the stars stay up in your heavens by casual request of a God being? Indeed not. They are there within the design of balance and mathematical laws that underpin all that is. Man continues in his mindless begging and blocks the very help he desires by being unwilling to participate except in ways that are contrary to the very laws that support his unhappy existence. The story of these laws surrounds them in what remains of nature, but in his misery he blinds himself. The scientific learned ones analyze the components but not the process of life within the manifested structures of life that surround them. The mental analysis of the mind deludes him into arrogant belief of his superiority over his surroundings rather than his brotherhood and kinship within it. How can those be helped that are becoming more and more blind to the very process within which they exist? The victim cannot be rescued, but must pull himself up by his own bootstraps and rescue himself by being responsible for his own rescue. Man is made in the essence of his source. He is a tiny holograph of this source. A holograph is a tiny fragment of the whole that has the potentiality of projecting the whole from which it came. Though the concept of the holograph has been encompassed in part, it has not been analyzed with application to the essence of life that is within all self-aware beings. It is the refocusing of this fragment toward its source of existence that determines the degree of the totality of the source that is brought forth into the known reality of each fragment's experience. If you consider the degree of the focus that has brought forth the planet Earth from the fragment of its source, you can begin to get the picture. Look at the magnificence of the human body that is the vehicle of your experience here. A vehicle capable of housing a self-awareness that can contemplate its source if it but will, because that source contemplates itself and in so doing fragments itself so that it can further contemplate itself through manifestation of experience. Within it is the free will to do this. Since free will is the vehicle for this contemplation, then it is manifest within each holographic fragment. This free will allows for all experience within a further enhancement of this self-contemplation process. This is the polarity that enables the recognition of that which serves the contemplation process and that which does not, so that the balance of these allows the completion of each exploration into the return of the fragment originally projected to its source. To follow this process as presented, there is a spiral of understanding as this is contemplated by the mind reading this information. Each fragment returns itself to the source that projected it. Thus you are led to understand the framework of the process you are within, for each of you is a holographic fragment of the source of all that is in the process of self-contemplation. Panic, you will become as nothing if you follow the path of the return. Indeed not. With each returning phase toward the source of your entry into experience, your own self-awareness grows and it becomes greater and greater until you have the absolute potential to be a total equal within the greater totality of that source contemplating itself. Does that boggle your finite minds? Indeed it should not. It should be the most comforting news that you have ever encountered. Could there ever be a brighter picture of your future ever painted? What possible pleasures could ever compete with a future like that? Let me assure you that there are no fleeting pleasures of the body incarnate that can compare with those that await you as the fragmentary self-awareness begins to ascend the spiral of experience toward the ultimate goal. The problem is bridging the gulf of misunderstanding that has been set as a trap by ones that have become caught up in the distorted misuse of the aspect of free will. These pitiful ones have become so caught up as to perceive themselves as powerful enough to reach not only total equality with the totality of the source of all, but even to can reach a place of superiority. Even the distorted psychiatric paradigm of your time would consider this insanity if they could but encompass the scheme in its totality. Within this distorted power grab, it is necessary to have a distorted replica of the process. A counterpart to that which exists. Humanity is but one building block of this, for they cannot create from a negative potentiality. Try as they have, it will not work, so they are left with the process of converting what already exists from what you would term positive into its opposite, a negative counterpart. Now, this is not a recent event in your linear counting process. How much have they accomplished? So as not to overwhelm you completely, let us say that it has reached a critical stage. To allow it to continue would jeopardize more of manifested experience by the source than is comfortable. Enough to bring a focus of the awareness of this awesome totality of source to bear upon the problem. The potentiality of this focus for bringing balance back into the totality of the process as explained above is awesome to contemplate, even within the limits of third-dimensional perception. We have attempted to explain before that there is help available, that it is powerful, and we have even understated it. However, the key to the release of this awesome force lies within that which has created the situation in the first place. Free will. If you were not of exceptional value beyond being the vehicle of change, other means of ending this could be employed. The fragment of which each and every individual fragment of that focus is a portion must be accounted for in order for the balance of all to be maintained. You cannot be simply written off. That would create a flaw that would cause unacceptable repercussions. All fragments must return to the source from which they were focused, projected, in order for that source to remain in the balance of wholeness. That is not to say that those that have perpetrated this distorted experience to the extreme will not have some interesting educational experiences, for certainly they shall. Your perception of time does not allow you to contemplate such a process, so do not attempt to do so. It is important that you gather into your awareness the wholeness of this situation so that you can begin to contemplate the understanding that even those of darkest behavior patterns are valuable to the source that you call God. They are a part of the totality of all that the word source implies. Simply telling you that they are a part of all that is has not brought with it comprehension that encompasses the necessary understanding, and so another approach to it has been attempted here. A back to basics lesson in your vernacular. Let us hope that this has now been accomplished. If not, perhaps the rereading of this will bring it about. It is not that we wish a softening of your attitude toward what is being perpetrated which would further their negative cause, but that you understand why simply destroying the whole experiment is not an option, or why just messing up their plans is not enough. The source, the big boss, wants it resolved, and who are we to argue? We have this key issue to resolve. So, let us get on with it. End number 18.